After the opening 4 rounds of the 2022 MotoGP World Championship, it's still anyone's guess as to who might well come out on top. It's far too early for that. Yamaha continue to struggle. Marc Marquez has proven he is simply not human, and rumours swirl around rider moves already. It's also Portugal race week as the Premier Class and Moto2 and Moto3 return to the Algarve. The recording date is Monday, the 18th of April. My name is Harry Benjamin. Joining me as ever is Crash MotoGP editor Pete McLaren and former Grand Prix rider and British champion Keith Huewen. And hello once again, gents. Thanks for joining us. It's Bank Holiday Monday in the UK, so we should be all having a day off, but we're here working hard. Let's start then. First 4 rounds done, Keith. And some of the talking points that have come out lately as we head to Europe for the first time is around the reigning champion, Fabio Quartararo, and it has not been the start to the season he certainly wanted, he certainly expected, and now rumours rife that he will be looking elsewhere. Could you even see that as a potential move, a Quartararo elsewhere, if Yamaha don't get their act together?
Great thing about this time of the year is that I like sitting on the IRTA deck at the track. You know, you sit in the paddock and the IRTA deck, it's got this elevated area, the silver tower of the International Race Teams Association. Mike Trimby's offices one side, wife Irene and all the other management teams on the other side of it. And in the middle of the steps, and you step up to the tower of IRTA, if you like. And you can sit on the little, if you're lucky, sit on the little tables and watch all the management scurrying around in the paddock, behind this truck, behind that truck. You know, most management figures look after multiple riders, so therefore it's like a jigsaw. They're trying to get them all into the rides they want to get them all in, where they're going to get dropped from, where they're going to get moved to. Very powerful times at the moment. Quartararo is still in the driving seat. You know, look what he's doing with that Yamaha. Look what everyone else isn't doing with the Yamaha, and that's the key. Quartararo is still in the driving seat. So it doesn't matter whether he's going to leave Yamaha or not. Whatever happens, it's going to be good for him in the long run. We all talked about this pre-season. You know, what a Yamaha got, what are they bringing to the table? Well, it appears nothing this year. And I would be, I'd be spitting tacks if I was Quartararo and his management. He's riding still really, really well. Everybody's moved on, you know, but not Yamaha. You've only got to look at what everyone else is doing in Yamaha's teams. It's just, you know, Dovizioso, waste of time. Dovizioso, you know, Dovi will only ride if he's got an opportunity, or ride really on the edge if he's got an opportunity. You know, he's always been renowned for not particularly pushing his luck on a motorbike that isn't capable of doing what he wants it to do. And that's clearly what's happening there. Either that or he's become just a little bit too old and complacent now, and that's him done. Which I don't believe. I think Dovi, you know, is a superb rider still. Morbidelli, what on earth's happened to Morbidelli? Is he still carrying an injury, I wonder? Because he just doesn't seem to have any. But he's another one, like Dovi. He's a bit of a cerebral type, isn't he? He's a bit more of a thinker. And I think that those types of riders won't push the envelope until they've got what they need to do the ultimate business, to be a podium runner. Whereas Quartararo maybe just pushes his luck a little bit more and is prepared to put it on the line a bit more. You know, Yamaha are in big trouble this year, and bigger trouble moving forward. You talk about contracts and stuff like that and management. We've already heard Toprak Razgatlioglu, who is an absolute Grand Prix star in the wings, waiting to come. Will he go to Yamaha? I wouldn't have said so. Not the way things are at the moment. I mean, why would you? You know, he might be world champion again this year at World Superbike, but would you go to MotoGP Yamaha team? I don't think you would. I don't think he should. And Kenan Sofuoglu, his manager, certainly won't make a mistake on that front.
The silence as far as rider announcements has been deafening, isn't it? I think we expected deals to be done early. There was a couple of done just, you know, at the start of the season, and now it seems like everyone's kind of waiting, aren't they? Quartararo obviously being among them, to just see, well, you know, which manufacturers are going to emerge here with the best bikes. If Ducati offered you a deal at the end of last year with that end of season run that Bagnaia had, you'd have snapped it up, wouldn't you? Now everyone just seems to be waiting, don't they? Mir hasn't signed yet. We keep hearing, you know, they want to continue. Suzuki want to continue. Mir's saying sort of positive things, but there's no deal yet. Quartararo, we keep hearing his manager, Eric Marhay, who's not someone who wastes a word, is a description I've heard about him. He's a very straight talking guy, you know, and if he says that they're looking at whatever is the best option for Fabio, you've got to believe that. He's not someone that I've come across who just says things and, you know, to put things out there, shall we say, and make ripples. He's not that kind of guy. So you've got to believe that Fabio is considering, well, what is my best option here? Could even he have imagined he'd be in this situation after 4 races? You know, no wins going into this European season. Maybe he's starting to, really think about where his best future might be. It's not worked out as they thought, has it? We're going into the European season with no wins by any Japanese manufacturers. It's been a real upset this start of the year, and it's great for us watching. But I think, the riders and their managers, they've got a lot of hard thinking to do, where maybe they might have thought the obvious option was to stay where they were. Maybe now they are starting to look around.
Well, you've come out of the tech freeze, which suddenly, after 2 years of being tech frozen because of the pandemic, so suddenly stuff didn't come to the fore that you might have expected. Ducati, 8 bikes on the grid, but haven't performed in the way that you might have expected. Suzuki are sort of there or thereabouts. Yamaha have failed effectively. Aprilia are the biggest things that have chucked a spanner in the works. Everybody's wondering, how good is Aleix? Is what most people are thinking at the moment. Was it Aleix? Was it the bike? Was it just one of those days where Aleix, was going so well that but the bike looks good. And they've still got concessions at the moment. They won't have by the end of the year. I think that Aleix will be. He's one of my top 3 for this weekend, by the way. So I've nicked him before anybody says.
Damn.
Aleix Espargaro, I think he's on for it still. I think that Kota was a miserable day for him, but it always is for him at Kota. He never seems to have a great time in Texas. So maybe the Aprilia factor has also steadied all the management up a bit. Well, let's just have a look and see where this Aprilia is heading at the minute. Maybe there's a situation here where we can pick off a decent ride or something. This is probably the most difficult year to predict where things are going next year. I can't think of it. Hang on, Harry. Formula One. Do you remember when Lewis signed for Mercedes and we all went, bloody hell, that doesn't seem like a good idea.
What a big
look what happened there. It's about predicting the future.
Absolutely.
And it's quite a tricky one for predicting the future as it is at the moment in MotoGP. What a Yamaha got in, are Yamaha just behind in their engineering? Does that mean that they just didn't get it to that cutoff point, the homologation cutoff point in Qatar? Just didn't get whatever they've got in the pipeline ready in time? Have they got these, some brilliant stuff up their sleeve that will be coming out at the end of this year when we start testing again for next year? I don't know. I mean, and nobody does. It's going to be up to management to do due diligence. Manager of Sam Lowes, when Sam went to Aprilia, they did, Roger Burnett went to Aprilia, checked everything out, did as much due diligence as any manager could do at the time, and signed Sam to Aprilia. It was a disaster. The second bike was never quite what it should have been. As we know, Aprilia are a bit ruthless when it comes to second riders, and quite a lot of them being British at in the years. You can only do so much. It's like crystal ball time. Who's got the biggest crystal balls?
That's the ultimate question. Well, you just saying that thing about Hamilton has made me sort of think, well, is that what Vinales has maybe done? Signed to Aprilia, everyone's gone, why has he done that? And then wait a year, you never know. Stranger things have happened.
He didn't know where to go, I don't think, at the time with Vinales. I think, it was one of them ones where I think he just wanted the pressure taken off of him at the time. The Yamaha move, I think his biggest regret was leaving Suzuki, I would imagine, because he didn't want to leave Suzuki. But Yamaha was where he had to go. It was, if you could run this same scenario over again year after year after year, and he'd do exactly the same thing. He'd regret leaving Suzuki, but you would still go to Yamaha because that was the team at the time. And it would seem that Vinales, the way he was riding, should have gone to Yamaha. But with hindsight, of course, wonderful thing, he should have stayed at Suzuki.
Well, look, we've spoken about Maverick for months on end, it seemed like last year as well. I'm sure we'll continue chatting about him. But I just wanted to pick up on something you said about Dovi earlier. He's struggling with this bike at the moment, Pete, and he's older. He's one of the older riders. I think he's 36 at the moment, and we've seen throughout motorsport, riders, drivers, they get younger and younger by the year. Darren Binder coming in from Moto3, making that jump, 24 years old. Currently, outperforming, if you look at the facts, his older, more experienced teammate. Do you look at, the seats occupied by Dovi and people like him up and down the grid and think, well, it's harsh, but, is time moved on? Is it time to give other people, youngsters? We've seen how talented the Moto2 and Moto3 pool is. Is he just wasting a seat there?
You've got to, with Yamaha, I think they were lacking experience, weren't they? I think they wanted somebody to come in and really they've got young guys on the bikes, haven't they? We know they're fast young guys. Dovi's come in, he's ridden he's ridden the Ducati, he's ridden the Aprilia recently as well, of course, in the Honda in the past. Now he's back on the Yamaha. He's got all this experience. And he was saying, actually, after the race on Sunday in Austin, he said, I've said the same thing since I got on this bike at Misano last year. It lacks grip. It lacks overall grip, and it specifically lacks rear grip. And he said the only way you can go fast on it is this Quartararo style. And this is why the Morbidellis, the other guys, they just can't. He said it's such a narrow range. You have to make the speed without using the rear grip. Interesting that Miller said the same thing about Bastianini's riding style after the race, that he was making the speed without using the rear grip. So it does seem like this characteristic, this skill, or whatever you want to call it, is really becoming important in MotoGP at the moment. And the guys that have it are making such a difference. Now, why that's happening, why it's suddenly come to the fore like this, nobody's really sure. Miguel Oliveira was saying that, again, everyone's talked about this narrow range of getting the tyres and the bike to work or not work. Why has it become like this? And, is it the aerodynamics? That was Oliveira's theory. Is that sort of making this everything just that little bit more of a knife edge in terms of getting it right or wrong? But certainly Dovi was clear. He said, look, this is the issue we have. And you either ride it like Quartararo, which is very, very difficult. He said it's a completely unique style. He said Quartararo was fast on this bike from the moment he got on it. It works with his style. But for the other guys, you're mentioning Morbidelli, of course. Morbidelli's a proven winner, title runner-up on a year-old bike. And the look on his face when the cameras were showing him in the pits in Austin, you could just see he's having a horrible time of it at the moment. He's sat there looking across at Quartararo. Okay, Quartararo, it's not going perfectly for him either, is it? Let's be honest. But still, when you've got such a gap to that guy, it's like the Mark and the Honda guys, isn't it, of years past? So, yeah, I mean, Dovi's situation, all he can do is pass on his experience. As I say, did Yamaha, did they hire him partly because they wanted someone, Rossi leaving, wanted someone to just give them that experience of other bikes and be able to tell them, look, this is what the bike needs. But the trouble is, people want to see action on it, don't they? Whether it's Dovi or it's Quartararo, they want to see movement on it. And we're just not seeing. When was the last time you heard about a new part arriving at Yamaha? I mean, I can't think of when that happened. So even, we know the bike is very similar from winter testing. That was the words that the riders used, and we haven't seen anything yet. Now, the European season is starting now. You get some post-race tests, things like that. Maybe we will start to see things. But as Keith said, the things are homologated. They're locked in place, and so there's really not much they can do. They can tweak around the edges, but again, if you look into the future and you're top racks manager, someone else, and you're trying to predict, well, is this bike going to make a step? You're looking at you want to see a pattern of improvements over previous years, but Yamaha have had these issues for many years now, and I don't know whether they'd be the first choice for many riders now.
In answer to your question, Dovi probably is done, purely and simply. I think he's always going to be a fast rider, but I think he's done from the point of view that his approach to the way things are done now is too old-fashioned. He's got to be on it right now. In my ear hole is like Casey Stoner. I'm just thinking what Casey's making of all of this at the moment, because there's a man with the best right hand in the business. When it comes to, forget about electronics, all the things he hated, it's about finding that grip. It's about finding where it is, that fine little line. British Superbikes at the weekend. Anybody watch BSB at the weekend? Silverstone, Sunshine, Glennie Irwin, absolutely brilliant. Found that sweet spot where you can do 30 laps without knackering the tyre out and putting yourself in the position. It was all about in his right hand, and that's the Casey Stoner syndrome. That is where riders are finding that extra little bit of grip and not using it. Enea Bastianini, you talked about him, real smooth operator with a motorbike. They've got to find it. There's not the time for Dovi to work it out, dial it in, basically ponce about, trying to find that fine line. You've got to get down and find it for yourself. The whole thing about bike racing, from club racing to the top line MotoGP, is it's about the rider still more than it is the platform. Again, if we look at the analogy with Formula One to MotoGP, platform, put a driver in it out of the top guys, he's probably going to win on the best platform. George Russell, when he jumped in Lewis Hamilton's car, basically should have won. He could have won it twice. We've talked about this before. If the team hadn't mucked him about and mucked him up, basically they screwed his first ever win. But in MotoGP, a rider, where he is on the bike, what he's doing with the bike, where his body is, all the little nuances that you get from a rider, that trick stuff that you cannot do when you're strapped in and holding onto a steering wheel, all those things make for a fast lap time or a fast race time. And that's where we're going nowadays. We've seen, there are riders who can put down one fast lap, use up all the tyre, get the absolute 100% out of the bike, the tyres for that lap that they need for qualifying. And then there are those that have got that wonderful right hand that can make it work. It's all on the right hand, isn't it? Brakes and throttle. You got the best right hand in the business at the minute. It seems you can get to the front. I mean, Enea Bastianini's ride, you watch him and you're in awe a little bit because you can't see just what he's doing with that bike or what he's not doing with the bike in some respects. It's just so smooth. It's like, that old thing that Jorge Lorenzo used to say, knife through butter. I mean, it's the way to ride a bike at the moment, it would seem. And with Michelin, with Michelin being the way they are, there's little changes that Michelin keep making, and it kind of throws everybody's data out. So it's down to the rider to find that sweet spot quick, early.
I think what we were expecting when Yamaha signed Dovi was it would almost be like the Pramac and the factory Ducati relationship, where Yamaha would use Dovi to develop parts and then hand them over to the factory team. And that, I think, kind of made sense to a lot of people. Okay, it's you can see what their thinking is behind that, but we're not seeing development. So it's,
Didn't we hear that from Yamaha right back in the day when they first formed the Sepang International Circuit team? I mean, I don't understand that whole concept as it is at the moment. They've lost Petronas as a sponsor, so they've got no money now. They're running MotoGP. It's a little bit more of a shoestring affair than it was before. I've not seen throughout the time, and unless it's been going on somewhere behind the scenes, I've not seen any of these so-called development parts and so-called this, that, and the other. And it just doesn't seem to have happened. What happened to the test team that they were talking about at one stage when they signed, fast riders to that? Where's Cal? Has Cal been doing any testing lately? Not that I've heard of. It seems very strange. It's like lip service almost. Yamaha have said a lot of things, but they haven't done a lot of things. And I think that Quartararo is going to be frustrated by that. And if they lose Quartararo, it is wholly and solely the buck stops completely with Yamaha. They've not given him A, what it appears they've promised, and B, what he needs.
It would certainly be a big statement, wouldn't it? I tell you who's also under pressure, though. It's Jack Miller, who a lot of talk recently from himself, too, about, possible demotion to the Pramac Ducati team. That wouldn't bother him. He was full of praise for Bastianini. He said it's not the bike, it's the rider who's been making the difference, and Enea's just had it. And we've also had a question from Christopher Flint, who says, on your point about Aleix and Aprilia earlier, too, I think Aleix has passed his use-by date, and I'm not surprised he has not been able to negotiate a contract yet for next year. Aprilia should offer that seat to Jack, who will make the difference with Maverick. So, Keith, what do you make of that? And also, Miller, it seems like there's potential movement on the horizon there, either way you look at it.
Well, I think Mr. Flint's got that about right, hasn't he? Because, you don't... Is it the bike? Is it Aleix? Aleix has always had one lap fast in him. He's always, we talked about screen biting, going, bite the screen and get that one fast lap out of him. But race-wise, he's never quite managed to pin it together until this year so far. So I understand what he's saying. I mean, I think Aleix deserves perhaps let's see where he goes this year. It's going to be one of them ones where it's up in the air. Jack Miller, will he do any better than Aleix? Difficult to say at this moment in time. Will he be bothered about going back to Pramac? I doubt it. The parties are certainly better, so he'd probably prefer it there, to be honest. Socially, it's certainly a better place to be. So it's kind of one of them ones where Jack Miller's underperformed this year, and I haven't been able to understand it quite in any kind of depth. But then again, Ducati have underperformed. They've been very inconsistent. Bagnaia, where's he been? There's so much to talk about regarding Ducati. When we thought 8 bikes on the grid, all that data, all that stuff, is going to make for a very fast manufacturer. And I had visions of all the other manufacturers complaining about the amount of bloody bikes on the track that are called Ducati. But they must be smiling, I would think, at the moment, because the investment of Ducati, they still can't do anything right for however hard they try.
I mean, I think it's hard to talk about replacing someone who's third in the World Championship and Vinales is 14th.
Yes.
So I think, at the end of the day, it's about results, isn't it? And at the moment, Aleix is bringing in the results. And I think a lot of us thought that Maverick would take the lead with this project. when he came in. Give him a couple of races and he will, a bit like when they were teammates at Suzuki, and Maverick was clearly, and he arrived at Suzuki as a rookie. By his second year, he was a step above Aleix. Well, we're now coming into the European season. He's done 6 races. He's done a handful of tests as well on the bike, and Aleix is still, in terms of the championship, a long way ahead of Maverick. So I think Aleix's situation kind of reminds me of Capirossi when he moved to Ducati at the start of the MotoGP era, and he was angry with Honda, wasn't he? He'd never quite got that support from Honda as a factory rider and things like that when he was at the Pons team, and he was just desperate for a chance to show what he could do. And that was why Ducati picked him over Max Biaggi, who Biaggi at that point decided, look, you need a Honda to win. I want to be on a Honda. Capirossi was just desperate to be a factory rider, have that support. He went to Ducati, completely fired up, and grabbed his chance. And I think Aleix, we've spoken about this before. He came into this year as the only guy who hadn't won a race. Now he's got this chance. This is the best chance of Aleix's career to win races, to be on the podium. And I think he's just got to give it everything, isn't he? And we'll see what he does with it. But he's got everything in place now. This is the moment for Aleix. And so, I wouldn't underestimate him now. I think that he's showing what he can do versus Maverick, as we know, who's one of the most talented guys in MotoGP when things all go ahead or go to plan, shall we say. So I don't know. I think it's hard to, we were talking about Dovi maybe underperforming, but I mean, Aleix, third in the World Championship, 11 points from the top. I mean,
it's not good enough, Pete. It's not good enough.
I'm afraid I'd probably give that guy a deal.
But we've still got 15 races to go. Bloody long way yet.
Yeah, true.
It's a hell of a way, isn't it? If we shift focus then, rather than scrutinising third in the world standings,